Good morning, everybody. How are you? Good. I'm glad. I couldn't wait to get that out. And it's good to see you all this morning. I hope you're ready to re-engage. Are you ready for that? Wasn't the music awesome today? I just, wow. I love it when stuff like that. They did such a great job in leading us, and you guys did really well. Just right back here, I could hear you singing and everything. That's fantastic. I love that. So I'm excited to continue our series today, and we entitled this "Re-engage" because we really believe that as we come into the fall and as just trying to get things started up again and make it really feel like we're back to normal. And of course, I know there's tons of things going on around us out in the world and everything, but we'll never get away from how important what we're doing here is. And so I just want to encourage you that this is really an important thing. What we're talking about, and especially, I want to tell you, it's well worth your time and your investment in following through with these things. And I want to make sure that this morning we talk about one of those that I think is really critical to our church, to our future, even to us as individuals, very, very important. So I want to start off by asking you a question this morning, and just how did you get here? And I don't mean by what car you came in or skateboard. Anybody come by skateboard? I don't know. Anybody longboarding? I don't know. But I will say this, that I'm talking more about how did you come to the point of coming to this building and joining, in the services or be here with his people called the church. Maybe you were like me. You were cordially required to attend church as a child, and then you kind of had to do it. Oh, did you catch that? Cordially required. And sometimes when I wasn't so cordial, my parents had a way of making it required anyway. And so I can tell you, some of you probably were in that place, and you've had different experiences when it comes to it. But some of you probably are in the room today. Maybe even some of you are brand new here today, and you were invited by someone. And somebody asked you to come here or come to a church at some point in your life, and they did something to get to that point to where they could invite you or ask you to come or to be a part of it. And so today we talk about investing in people and inviting them to come. And so I asked the question, how did you get here? So I want you to think of maybe how that happened and who invested in your life to bring you to this point. And what made the decision right for you to actually accept the invitation or whatever. And I want to tell you something. I truly believe this, that an invitation can change everything, depending on what kind of thing you're being invited to. But I believe when it comes to what we do and when we come together as the church, and we're gathered here, I believe that an invitation changes everything. I think when we invite people to come and to be a part of it, it actually engages us, but it engages them, and it really kind of expands our faith. It grows who we are, but it also helps us to depend on God a whole lot more for our life and what we do and the relationships we have in our lives. And so today, that's really kind of where we're headed. And I want to tell you this. I believe we have it within our power to make a real difference, and I'll tell you why. You have, and I have, the power to change the trajectory of someone's life. I believe we have the power to change other people's lives by the way we think about them and how we invite them to be a part of what's going here. So today, as a part of this, I want to show you a couple stories. A couple of stories from the life of John, who was one of Jesus' followers. He was one of the main leaders of the early church. He was one that was very close to Jesus in relationship. They had a very strong bond between them. And so when John wrote he wrote this story of Jesus' life, it was very much a relational version of what was going on among the lives of everyone who was following Jesus and how other people would observe and look at that. So whenever you see John, you know that it's going to have that relational side to it. And on top of that, John captures things when he wrote in his book of John that's in the New Testament. He captured things differently than some of the others. And actually, one of the things that he captured different than some of the other writers is in one of the passages we're looking at today. And so I want to take you to this first letter or first book or this first story that John really captured of Jesus' life, and bringing it to this point to be able to see how an invitation can change everything. So we start here, and Jesus was going about calling different individuals to come and to be a part of his ministry. Matter of fact, that was a big part of what he did at the beginning. He would call different individuals to come and to follow him. And so you're going to see that phrase here. And when we talk about following, sometimes in, I call it, Christian world or church world or whatever, when we talk about terms and words that we use a lot, one of them is disciple or discipleship. And so whenever you were considered a disciple, you were then considered someone who was also a follower. So that follower and disciple is kind of interchanging. You can kind of use it either way. And so if you would consider yourself, if you followed Jesus, if you believed in him, you've trusted him, you've had a personal encounter, experience with him, and you have a real story about that, then you would be considered a follower. And a follower is somebody who really, they give up everything to actually do this. Now, you don't just necessarily wake up in the mornings and think, I'm going to just follow somebody today. You have to be presented with something, an experience or a story that changes everything for you. So I want to take you to chapter 1, and we really kind of unfold this story, and we see some men that are involved in following Jesus that he called, but watch what happens in their experience. So we start here. It says, the next day Jesus decided to leave for Galilee. Finding Philip, I stop right there and say, here's the first example of it. Philip did not wake up that morning going, I'm going to go out and find a man, and I'm going to follow him. I'm going to give up everything I'm doing, and I'm going to follow him. You just don't do that, right? Philip was found by Jesus. Jesus sought him out, found him, and he said to him, follow me. He asked him to be his disciple. He asked him to be involved in discipleship, to be a follower of Jesus. And so Philip, like Andrew and Peter, was from the town of Bethsaida. That's just the region that they were from. But Andrew and Peter, and we know, if you know much about the story of Jesus, you know that Peter was one of the main characters all the way through to Jesus and through the beginning of the early church after Jesus rose from the dead and went back to heaven. This is an incredible statement. You've got these guys, all of them coming together. It's the beginning of their story. It's the beginning of their experience. The first time that they had ever really encountered Jesus, now they're really doing it. And Jesus is saying, hey, I want you to drop everything and follow me. I want you to do this. Well, now the story goes on, and it says, right after Philip comes to meet Jesus, he first understands who he is. He does this. Look at what he does. Philip found Nathanael. He actually decided, I'm going to go out, just like Jesus found me, I'm now going to go and find my friend Nathanael. Now, if you were to study Nathanael and try to figure out who he is, one of the things that John captures, I believe, is he captures his name as Nathanael in his letter, but then Matthew, Mark, and Luke, when they write about the stories of Jesus, they record his name as Bartholomew. Now, some people say, don't know if that's the same person. I can't guarantee that for sure either, but it does seem like it parallels in a lot of ways. What we know about Nathanael is that he was a real follower of the Hebrew tradition and the Jewish tradition. And so everything he did, he knew it well, he understood it well. He was probably a very heady guy who wanted to make sure, and so he would go back and study and know things about it. So when someone would bring something up about that, he would know the answers. Well, that's pretty key. When Philip meets him, he knows that about Nathanael. And so he wants to say that to him. He says, Philip found Nathanael and told him, "We have found the one Moses wrote about in the law." Of course, that would be important to somebody who is following Jewish tradition, right? We found this one that Moses wrote about in the law and about whom the prophets also wrote. Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph. He says, this is the one, the Messiah, the one that you know about, Nathanael, the one that you've taught about, or the one that you speak about a lot because you are so into this. I mean, he knew his story because they had a relationship, they had a friendship, they knew each other. And so Philip, what's he do? Immediately wants to go. As soon as Jesus talks to him, he has an encounter with him, an experience with him, he immediately says, I want to go tell my friend. And so he goes and tells his friend Nathanael, and he tells him on something that relates to him in their relationship, something he knew that would be important to him. And he says, Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph. He's the one that we've met. He's called us to follow him. You got to meet this guy. So what's Nathanael's response to that? This is really great. Nazareth? That's the first thing he said. He didn't say anything. Who's Jesus? What's his? No, he says, Nazareth? Can anything good come from there? It's kind of like saying, Fairborn? Can anything good come from Beaver Creek? Can anything good come from, of course, Enon? Can anybody? That one we'd understand. All right, but just kidding. All right, I love Enon, by the way. But so you kind of get the idea. Okay, it's like you think of this little town, this little area, this place, that you wouldn't think anything good would come from. You wouldn't think that it would be a place where, people would go, oh, wow, the Messiah is going to come from Nazareth, There would be lots of other areas or other places that they would think of first. So immediately, Nathanael, being the guy who's very heady about this, very, very ingrained in the Jewish tradition, goes, Nazareth? Why would he come from? Does anything good come out of there? They don't even have a decent hot dog stand. All right? I mean, does anything come out of there? And so he asked him this question, but Philip just turns right back to him and says, come and see. You may not believe it, but come and see. This man will change the trajectory of your life. This man has a story to tell. Philip knew that a special invitation, a simple invitation, would change everything for Nathanael. Because he would meet him, and then guess what? If you go a little bit more about Nathanael's life, guess what happens to him? Not only does he become a follower of Jesus, but then he later, as Jesus lives his life, he follows him all during that period of time, and then it comes to a point that once Jesus dies, he's risen, and he ascends back to heaven. In the early church, Nathanael becomes one of the men who takes the message of the risen Savior Jesus to places like Ethiopia and others. And the gospel spread like wildfire because of Nathanael. An amazing thing, right? But it all came down to the thing that happened here. Let me just tell you, an experience is better than an explanation. See, Philip knew that if he could take him there and let him see Jesus and experience him, he would understand. He would try maybe to explain why he thought he was the Messiah. He could come up with all kinds of reasons why he maybe thought that was the case, but he knew, no, he needs the experience. Let me just tell you, last week, Jeff Henderson was here, and I got a chance to take him out for dinner on Sunday night, which was really awesome to have a chance to meet with him. And if you weren't here last week, well, I'm sorry you missed it. You should go back online and watch last week. But Jeff and I, we went out to dinner, and I tried to get into one place, couldn't get there because the reservations were already all taken. And so we went to this restaurant, and I could tell you all about it. I could explain everything we did. Matter of fact, I could explain to you that I sat down at the table, and I ordered steak Maui. Okay? And it was incredible. This sauce, teriyaki sauce that was put on there, or teriyaki for those of you from Enon. No, just kidding. Teriyaki sauce on there, and it was just, it was lovely, all right? And I took a bite of that, and I took more bites. Matter of fact, if Jeff had not been with me, I'd have licked the knife and the plate. It was so good. Now, I could explain to you all the things about it and why it was. And you can even try to reproduce that, but by experience I can tell you it's not possible. And so you try your best, to explain it. But honestly, I need to take you with me so you could experience it. Have that steak yourself. It was incredible. Boy, it's 11:30, isn't it? All right, so you kind of get the idea, right, of what was going on there. You know what? An experience is far better than an explanation. And as much as we maybe think, we've made a mistake, I believe, sometimes as followers of Jesus. We've made a mistake by assuming that all someone needs to do is hear about Jesus, and then that's good, that we've done our job, that it's all taken care of. But let me just tell you something. It takes building in a relationship and investing in someone's life. And I'll just maybe phrase it this way. And if you tweet me, I'll get probably a lot of feedback from this one. But trust is more important than truth when introducing someone to Jesus. Now, make sure you understand what I'm trying to get at here. Trust is more important than truth when introducing somebody to Jesus. In other words, they're not going to listen to truth until they trust who's telling them. So you've got to take the time to build into the relationship. And quite honestly, if you don't take that time, then your explanation is only going to be just information to them. It will not be something that changes the trajectory of their life. It'll only be something that they hear as an explanation of it rather than an experience. So it's so important, so critical for us to do this. Now, John actually captures another story later in some chapters, in chapter 4 of what he wrote. And so I'll take you to John chapter 4. And this is the story of the Samaritan woman at the well. And a lot of us maybe know this story, or maybe you've heard it before, or you're familiar with it. I encourage you to go back and read all chapter 4 if you want to know all the background story. I'm going to jump to the part of the story that is not told very much. Let me just give you a little background so you understand. Samaritan woman, she was there carrying a jar. It would not have been common for a man like Jesus, a Jew, to walk through Samaria in the first place. But he went there to engage with this woman and talk to her about something that was important in her life, something that would change the trajectory of her life. And not only her life, but many others of her friends. And so she had a very torrid past. There had been issues that she was going on. And Jesus, when he met her, could tell her things about her life. Because he was God in the flesh, he knew what she had done. He knew so much about her. And he was able to tell her all of these things that she was doing. So we jump to the end of the story where actually she hears this, and it really, she believes that Jesus truly is the Messiah, and she believes that he's the one to come and who could change her life. And this is what happens. She left her water jar. She had come to the well to get water. And honestly, you just don't leave your water jar there, because a water jar would have been expensive, something important that they would have had in the house. And so it wouldn't have been something she would have left, but it was so important for her to leave and to go. Listen to what she does. She left her water jar, and the woman went back to the town and said to the people, "Come see a man." Now, with a woman with a torrid past, you can imagine the reaction of the people in the town when they come back and they say, "Hey, I just saw a man." And they would all be, "Yes, of course you did." But in this case, it was much different. Her story was different. It was not the same as what she might have been saying in the past. They could tell something was different about what she was saying, and that who she had met, it was completely different. And it had changed her. "Come see a man who told me everything I ever did." To them, that would have been a sign. This man has to be something special. He has to have something. There must be truth to what she's saying. "Could this be the Messiah?" she said to them. "Could this be the one we've been waiting on?" Can you imagine her rushing back and telling? with urgency in her voice, she says, "Come see a man." She has an invitation. She knew that there was going to be a changed life as a result of her sharing that invitation to come see this man. Come and see who he is. Now the story continues to go. They came out of the town and made their way toward him. They did not delay. They wanted to hear this. Why? Because her story was so compelling. Her story was different. She had experienced Jesus, and now her story was telling them something different than they had ever heard. Now, you jump ahead. Now, what's it going to do? They come to see him. What happens? Go down to verse 39 and see what it says. Many of the Samaritans from that town believed in him because of the woman's testimony. He told me everything I ever did. Some believed it because of the very testimony she said. So when the Samaritans came to him, they urged him to stay with them, and he stayed 2 days. He stayed longer so that he could interact with more people. They started inviting all of them in. You come, hey, you come, you come, you come. It was incredible, the invitations that were going on there to come and to see Jesus. But then it goes on, and because of his words, many more became believers. See, she had a story of meeting Jesus. She comes back, and some people believed that story, so much so they wanted to hear Jesus again. They go, and then they start inviting their friends so that they would be able to share that and hear what Jesus had to say. They said to the woman, "We no longer believe just because of what you said." Why was that? They no longer had to believe in what the woman said. Why? Now we have heard for ourselves. They were invited, they came, they heard the story of her life change. She invited them, they invited each other, they hear from Jesus, and now they believe straight from him, and they know that this man really is the Savior of the world. I mean, it was all about the story. I know you think about this, but every time I see a story like this and I think of it, I remember how important it is for just what Jesus did in my own life. What's your story? What would your story be that would be compelling to someone else about how God has touched you or changed your life? See, I believe that stories are stronger than well-prepared arguments. I think another mistake that we've made, that we think we've got to come up with this doctoral dissertation on theology before we can ever talk to people about this, or it's the pastor's job to do this and not really my job or my response. Can I just tell you, don't think that you have to have every answer and know every Bible verse and the reference. Don't think that you've got to know every detail of theology or anything. All you have to do is be able to share your story of when you met Jesus and how he changed the trajectory of your life. And when you're able to share that, it's amazing what can happen. You can imagine the interactions that were going on for not only Philip and Nathanael, but also the Samaritan woman and all of these people within that town, because they were invited to come and see and meet him. That's why it's so important for us that our lives are based on an invitation. Every one of us got here somehow, and an invitation can change everything. An invitation can change everything. So I take it to this point. I think sometimes that we think that we have to be able to do a certain way to speak to people or whatever, or it won't be effective. Or that we're supposed to just keep this to ourselves. It's not something that we should be invading other people's lives with. But I'll just tell you, it's more important to be wise and intentional than outspoken and right. These days when we live in a very volatile time for so many people out in our culture and out in people where people are dwelling and living and experiencing things that they're going through and everything. Right now, it's easy to be outspoken, to be right. But I want to tell you, when it comes to introducing people to Jesus, it's much better to be wise and intentional. And to do this, investing is going to take listening to people. It's going to take listening to somebody else, listening to what their story is, listening to who they are. Just like Philip had listened to Nathanael probably many times before of all of this Jewish tradition that he knew. And he was able to actually go in there and speak to his level because he knew exactly what would be on his mind about this. So, just think of it. I don't know how many of you know who Donald Miller is. Donald Miller, written several books, has a great blog. I love his stuff, and I read him all the time. But he wrote this, and I believe this is really true. Building relationships isn't in the words you say, but in the questions you ask. So you've got to be willing to ask questions of other people and listen. Hear what they have to say. Invest in them enough time to where you build trust with them. Not to make them your project, but actually to be able to hear their story and to be able to share yours. Because honestly, who wouldn't want to tell somebody about someone who changed the trajectory of their life? Did Jesus change the trajectory of your life? I mean, really, I want you to think about that for a second. Did he really change the trajectory of your life? Think about where your life would have been heading without Jesus. And when someone invited you and brought you into a place where you could experience it rather than just hear an explanation of it. I would fear that so many people are maybe placing their faith on explanations and maybe these well-prepared arguments rather than a true experience and story that has really affected their lives. And Jesus is personal. Matter of fact, our faith is meant to be personal, but not private. It's never meant to be private. Matter of fact, there's nothing private about it. From the beginning of it, it's a time to us to share about the grace that God has given. And quite honestly, the same reaction the Samaritan woman would have here, the way she reacted to run back and tell everybody, would be the same reaction that anyone who's had their lives changed by Jesus should have. So it's kind of fun to think about it, but every one of us, we're not meant to be private about this. We're meant to be personal. Matter of fact, Matthew, one of Jesus' closest followers, who had an incredible story of being changed and his trajectory changed of his life, he said this in Matthew chapter 5, "You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house." You can't hide a faith that has changed your life. The Samaritan woman couldn't hide it. Philip, he couldn't hide it. And then Nathanael, he couldn't hide it. And the Samaritans, once they heard her story and met Jesus, they couldn't hide it. See? Why would we ever hide it? Why would we ever keep it to ourselves? Unfortunately, though, what's happened is a lot of times in churches, we kind of tend to get here and we're all happy with each other and we like what we got and we don't want anything to mess that up. And actually, we're no longer really a functioning church if that's what happens. A church that becomes inward focused and only think of themselves, we actually have taken away the purpose that Jesus had for the church in the first place. And so think about it. Would we want to be a useless group of people, or do we want to be a church? Right? The whole idea of it is not to be this. Now look what it says. We're supposed to be a light. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. This is how they see it, by the way we're for them and the way that we're involved in their lives. Jeff challenged us with that last week about being for other people and for our community, and always thinking of that. That gives us that opportunity to let our lights shine. You don't hide the light. You don't keep it private. You shine it. You let it shine. So important. So when we think of this, we have a saying around here that really kind of tops this off about being for people. And it's a question. It's this: what does love require of me? A couple weeks ago, I used this quite a bit in that message. 2 weeks ago today, and I used a stop sign to say, stop and just ask the question, what does love require of me? I think it applies here too. It applies for us to consider this and say, what does love require? What does the love that Jesus had for me, what does that now require of me to show to other people? And quite honestly, investing in their lives and inviting them, because we know an invitation changes everything. If that were really the case, imagine showing that kind of love to other people is exactly what God wanted for His followers. He put it into the life of Philip to do it with Nathanael. He definitely turned the Samaritan woman loose to go back to her people, and then he stuck around a couple of days. Sure, I want to meet your friends. Of course. So I bring it down to this. I want you to imagine a church with me. A church where people who are skeptical of the church begin to love the church because of how well we treat each other and how well we treat them. That would be the vision. A vision of wanting to be a place where people who aren't familiar with church, or they've been hurt by the church at some point and gave up on church, all of that would come back and say, I love church. I love these people. I love what's going on. Why? Because of what they see. See, because the plan is for people on the inside to bring the people on the outside inside. That makes sense? Did you catch what I just said? The people on the inside, the plan is for the people on the inside to bring the people on the outside inside. And when we do that, that's exactly what Jesus is wanting of us. Quite honestly, that's what's going to lead them into a growing relationship with Jesus. And it's going to take all of us to do that. Matter of fact, it starts with an investment in the life of someone you know. That's where it starts. Who do you know? Who's that person right now? The person you go to school with, the person that lives in your neighborhood, the person that you work with, the person that you may be, in your mind, it's like the furthest thought that person could ever take you up on an invitation. You know, who is that person that you could be investing in and building trust, sharing an experience, telling a story, and inviting them to come be part of it? Got to tell you, that's really where it's going to be. And I want to ask you, who invested in you? Who was it who did it for you? Who invested in you? How did you get here? How did you get to this point to where you were a part of a church? And you know what? I'm not here to guilt trip anybody here today. Matter of fact, this isn't about guilt at all. If I were going to guilt you into doing this, I would have a lot more things to say rather than what I've said. I would make it up myself, and it wouldn't have anything to do with the Bible. Okay? We have been given an incredible reason why. Shouldn't be any guilt involved at all. It should be all joy. It should be all wanting to be able to share it with as many people as possible. And I would just say this. Investing in someone gives you the chance to invite them. Investing in someone gives you the chance to invite them. If you invest in their life and you take the time to do this, then they're going to want to hear what you say. If you listen to them, if you're wanting to build trust, if you haven't crammed truth down their throat first, if you've taken the time to really know them, not make them into a project, really have that true desire to be friends with them. Let me just tell you something. The things we see happening outside and in the culture and we hear on the news and all of that, can I tell you, a lot of that could be counteracted by the way we share and invest in people's lives. So, I want you to think, about this and clearly consider it. Followers aren't followers because of information, but they're followers because they trusted another follower and learned to believe what they believed. It really comes down to it. You know what? You could probably say, I don't know, but remember, an invitation can change everything. You may have a wonder about what I'm saying, but it's probably better if you just hear a story. So I have a story for you this morning. Watch this.
Leah and I met because our daughters went to preschool together. We met at a birthday party, and our daughters were best buds, so we decided to have a play date. I went over to her house, and we spent some time together and got to know each other, and kind of found out that we had a lot in common with our relationships. We both happen to be in very controlling relationships, and that sort of bonded us really quickly, really fast. So her daughter was in my pre-K class, and we started hanging out more outside of school and talking regularly. And I think that's when I really, I guess, I don't know how to describe it. We had a connection. I knew I could go to her to talk to her about things, and it was comforting. So when I decided to get baptized, it was a really special moment for me that I wanted all those people who were important to me to be there. And Leah was one of those people.
Over that time, we became friends. She invited me to her baptism. I knew for a long time that I was searching for something more. I wanted to go to church, but I was in a relationship that was very controlling. I would always say that I wanted to go to church. I would actually go to church with people, and I would almost get reprimanded, or felt like it was a bad thing for me to do. But I continued. Janet would invite me to kids events, which I loved taking my daughter to, and because I wanted her to get that in her life. So, and then she actually invited me to a service, and I met Greg at guest reception, and I knew that's where I was supposed to be.
I didn't really, I guess when I invited Leah, it wasn't with this goal in mind to change her. She wasn't my project or anything. Just the bond that was created between us. I cared about her so much, and it was so much easier at that point in time. You see the speck in somebody else's eye, so I was able to see how much she was hurting and what she was going through. And I had been at Fair Creek for several years at that point, and it was my home. I love my church. I don't say that just to, say it. I actually legitimately mean it, because there's been so many things that I've gone through in my life that have been really difficult. And having the love and support of my church family has been incredible. It's what's helped me to get through a lot of things. And when I saw Leah hurting, when I remember talking to her and the tears and crying, and I didn't want her to keep feeling that way. I wanted to help her feel better, and I knew that this was a place that I went to, and when I was here, whether it was for activities or service, I felt good. I felt loved. I felt happy, and I could have joy in my life even though my life was miserable, and I just wanted her to be able to experience that.
So by receiving that invite from Janet to come to Fair Creek, I not only was able to have a church family, have Janet as an even stronger friend, not really friend, we call ourselves a lot, almost sisters. But really, I also found, the love of Christ and Jesus, and that's something that I needed. And you can't take that away.
I remember leaving the service and going out to the cars, and Leah was in hers. And I don't remember too many things these days, but I can very vividly picture when I could tell that Jesus had gotten to her heart that day during the service, and it just blew my mind, because I thought the service has nothing to do with what she's going through, and yet somehow he reached her heart and changed it, and he used me to do it. And I thought, sometimes you think that the way that God uses you is going to be this huge monumental thing, and sometimes you don't realize how big it is until years down the road of seeing what that little tiny invitation did to change so many lives.
Since I've met Jesus and have that faith. My life has just been incredibly changed. I mean, I went from being a very depressed, anxious person that just really honestly lost. And I met my husband, which is amazing. We've got our kids, and raising them here, and knowing that love is just, it's amazing and priceless. I'm so grateful and thankful that Janet invited me, because I have a new season. I mean, I have a family. Over the past almost, 6 years almost, I've been here with Bear Creek, and I wouldn't go anywhere else.
And I don't know, just knowing that, I'm so thankful that Jesus was able to use me, and I let him use me to be part of a bigger story. I don't know. We've come a long way.
We have.
An invitation can change everything. Somebody's life can be changed by that. The trajectory of someone's life can be changed by a simple invitation. I want to encourage every one of us to think about that person. Just like Janet thought of Leah, who's that person in your life that you're maybe already investing in, you're listening to? You maybe have already built the trust with even, but could give you an opportunity that you could invite them. I want to encourage you to think of their story. What would their story be now, and where would it be in the future? How might Jesus them encountering and experiencing him, rather than just getting an explanation of it, they experience him? How might that change? And consider this. If you thought of those names, and you think of who that might be that you might invite, I want you to direct your attention of the stories that are right behind me, hanging up here, the names that are on cards. If you were a part of the 168 hours of prayer that we did, the last experience in the room was you came into a room and it was draped with lights like this, and you took one of these cards and you wrote the name of who you were investing in, someone that needed to meet Jesus. And then you wrote your name on it, and then you clipped it to the light. And so this represents those names, but it doesn't even come close. Not even quite 168 people, because some people did it a few times through that time period, but somewhere, close to 168 people are represented who are investing in names, these people here that could have a story, because their life's story was changed. The trajectory of their life was completely changed, because an invitation could change everything. You can imagine what these stories might be, but believe this, these are only half of the cards. There were well over 700 names by that group of people that went through the prayer room. Now, you add that to the names that you thought of if you weren't able to participate. And imagine how many people's lives could be changed by an invitation, a simple invitation. And the trajectory of their life could be changed. Something that Jesus gave us the opportunity to do, to build trust with them, to build into their lives, and then invite them. So who could it be for you? Who could it be, that person that you might do it? Are their names hanging here, or the names right now hanging in your mind and you're thinking of that? Who might I invest in and invite them? I want to pray for us right now. And I want you to pray for that person you're thinking of. And today, I just say this. For every person here, is represented. You may have been new today, but I might just tell you, people who experience Jesus even in the first first few times usually are the best ones to tell other people and invite them. So everyone here can participate. And then I might want to say to those of you who are watching online, I love the fact that you're there and that you've joined us and that you're a part of our online campus. But you can actually do this too. Matter of fact, any of us, if we encounter someone that says, I can't really come to church right now, or I can't be there, or I actually know this person that lives in California, or they live in Boston, or they live, in Dubai. Every one of them can be a part of our church. All you have to do is invite them and believe it. This is really kind of a cool thing. We've started to engage with people on that level and making it a true online church. And so you can invite anyone. You can invite anyone.